Across the world, every available shipyard was put to use. The call went out to every country, every organization, to contribute whatever they could. People who had once dreamed of space exploration now worked tirelessly, building warships that could stand a chance against the alien menace. The planet's most advanced technology was repurposed for one goal: survival. But time was not on their side. The alien fleet had grown to monstrous proportions. A report from the outer edge of the solar system showed that the alien armada numbered more than 1,000 ships, most of them enormous war vessels, bristling with weapons humanity could only imagine. And these weren't just ships. They were the tip of the spear. Their scouts and smaller ships had already begun scouting Earth's defenses, looking for weaknesses. The enemy had no intention of simply attacking. They were planning to crush humanity, destroy their resolve, and scatter the remains to the stars. The tension on Earth was palpable. People went about their daily lives, but the atmosphere had changed. Everyone knew that the world was on the brink of war. News broadcasts ran constant updates about the progress of the Earth fleet's preparation, while citizens stood united, waiting for the call to action. Across the globe, military officers briefed their teams, scientists worked in underground bunkers, and engineers toiled day and night to produce ships faster than ever before. As the first wave of warships took shape, a feeling of dread settled over humanity. Would they be ready in time? Could they fight off the alien invaders before their home planet was reduced to a smoking ruin, just like Ilara? The answer was still uncertain, but there was one thing that was becoming crystal clear: humanity would fight. They would not die without a fight. The camera shifted back to the command center, where President Carter stood before a massive screen showing the construction of Earth's new fleet. A total of 700,000 warships were now in the final stages of assembly. They were massive, powerful, and built for one purpose: to avenge the fallen colony and defend Earth. But the reality was sinking in. Even with such an immense fleet, humanity was outmatched. The aliens had already proven their ability to destroy entire colonies. What chance did Earth stand? "We've got one shot at this," Carter muttered to herself. She turned to General Alvarez. "Prepare the fleet. I want every ship ready for launch in 72 hours. The general nodded, but his expression was uncertain. "The enemy fleet is already closing in, ma'am. We have no idea how many reinforcements they've got. We're out of time." Carter's gaze hardened. "Then we fight, General. We fight until the last ship falls. Earth will not fall without making them pay for every life lost." Outside the command center, the first ships were lifted into the sky, engines roaring as they ascended to join the growing fleet. But even as the ships took flight, a sense of unease gripped the people of Earth. The alien invaders had already shown their power. Now, humanity had to show them that they were not weak, that they would stand together and push back. The countdown to war had begun, and the only question left was, would humanity survive? The night sky over the colony of Ilara was as peaceful as any other. The stars glittered in their distant, silent dance, casting soft light over the sprawling city below. It was a quiet place, a sanctuary in the far reaches of space. People went about their daily routines, unaware of the horror that would soon unfold. The colony had become a symbol of peace and prosperity, a shining example of humanity's ambition to expand beyond Earth. But that peace was about to be shattered. Captain Drell stood on the observation deck of the colony's central command tower. He gazed out into the endless abyss of space, lost in thought. The wind whispered through the large windows, but something felt off. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The usual hum of the colony's infrastructure was muted, and there was an eerie stillness in the air. Without warning, the sky above him lit up with an unholy glow. A wave of shock and confusion rippled through the city as the ground shook beneath their feet. A massive dark shadow passed overhead, blocking the stars. People screamed in terror as they looked up to see the enormous alien ships descending from the void. The first explosion rocked the tower, sending Drell stumbling to the floor. He quickly regained his footing, his heart racing. The command center's alarms blared, and the red lights flashed, signaling a full-scale attack. "Sir, we're under attack," a panicked officer shouted, his voice barely audible over the chaos. Drell's mind raced. His first instinct was to order an evacuation, but it was too late. The colony's defense systems had been disabled in the first wave. The alien ships, sleek and terrifying in their design, fired relentlessly at the colony, their weapons cutting through the buildings like knives through paper. Another explosion shook the tower, sending debris and glass cascading down to the streets below. Fires broke out across the city, and the once peaceful skyline was now ablaze with destruction. "Get to the emergency shelters," Drell commanded, grabbing a nearby officer by the arm and pulling him toward the evacuation protocol station. But the officer was already gone, sprinting down the hallway, desperate to escape the death that was rapidly approaching. Drell turned back to the view screen, his heart sinking. He could see the destruction from the command center's high vantage point. The streets were filled with chaos as people ran for their lives, but there was nowhere to hide. The alien fleet was too advanced, their weapons too powerful, and the colony had no chance. As the second wave of alien ships descended upon the city, Drell made a decision. He turned to his communications officer. "Send a distress signal to Earth. Now, tell them the colony is under attack. We need help, immediately." His voice was steady, though inside, he was filled with panic. He knew how far away Earth was. Even with the fastest ships, it would take days, maybe weeks, to get a response. And they had minutes, if even that. The officer hesitated, fear flashing in his eyes. "Sir, the communications array is down. We have no way to send out a signal." The words hit Drell like a physical blow. They were cut off from Earth. There was no way to call for backup, no way to warn humanity that they were under attack. Another explosion rocked the building, and Drell was thrown against the wall. He pushed himself to his feet, blood trickling down his forehead from where a shard of glass had embedded itself in his skin. His mind raced. The colony was collapsing. There was nothing left to save. But his duty was clear. If he couldn't save the people of Ilara, he would at least ensure that humanity knew what had happened here. He needed to send the message. He stumbled toward the backup communication terminal in the corner of the room, his legs shaking. The sound of gunfire echoed in the distance as the enemy forces began to land on the surface. The human soldiers stationed at the colony fought bravely, but they were no match for the alien invaders. Drell could see their ships landing, their doors opening to unleash unknown horrors upon the city. He quickly typed in the emergency distress code and activated the final message to Earth. "This is Captain Drell of the Ilara colony. The colony is under attack. We are being overwhelmed. The enemy fleet is too powerful. There is no hope of survival. Please, Earth, help us." He hit the send button with trembling hands, then collapsed to the floor, staring at the flashing lights of the dying console. The message was sent. It would be received. Soon, he hoped, but it would be too late. The ground trembled again, louder this time. Another massive explosion rang out, and the building shook violently. Drell's heart pounded in his chest as he heard the sounds of alien forces storming the command center. The end was near, but even as he faced the inevitable, he could feel a deep, burning anger rising within him. The people of Ilara, his people, had done nothing wrong. They were just trying to live, to build something better. And now, it was all being destroyed in an instant by forces they couldn't even comprehend. As the first alien soldiers entered the room, Drell's vision blurred. His last thought was not of fear, but of fury. Humanity would not forget this day, and one day they would make the invaders pay for every life lost. He would make sure of that. Outside the command tower, the fires raged. The colony was falling, but its last breath was filled with defiance. Somewhere, in the vast reaches of space, Earth would receive the message. And when that day came, humanity would rise. But for now, Ilara was lost, its people scattered to the winds of war. The invasion had begun, and there was no turning back. The sun hummed low in the sky over Earth, casting an eerie, golden glow across the planet. The morning had started like any other, but everything had changed the moment the distress signal from Ilara had been received. The calm of the day shattered, replaced by an overwhelming sense of urgency. The world's governments scrambled to respond. The military elite gathered in secure facilities, preparing for a war that no one had predicted. The news was filled with reports of the destruction, and all around the world, people sat in front of their screens, trying to process the incomprehensible. The colony of Ilara, a symbol of humanity's future in space, was gone, reduced to ashes in a matter of hours. And there was nothing left to do but fight. The President of the United States, Sarah Carter, sat in a high-security command center beneath the White House. Her face was pale, her eyes red from lack of sleep, but her mind was razor-sharp. The video feed from Ilara was still fresh in her memory. Captain Drell's final message, the images of the burning city, the hopelessness in his eyes as the aliens descended upon the colony. It was a message she would never forget. She looked up from the screen as General Alvarez entered the room, his face grim. "Ma'am, we've confirmed it. The aliens are moving toward Earth," he said, his voice low and controlled. "Their fleet is massive, and there's nothing in our arsenal that can match it." Carter stood up, feeling the weight of her responsibility crash down on her shoulders. She had always known that one day humanity would face its reckoning, but she never imagined it would happen like this. The colony's destruction was only the beginning. The alien threat was real, and humanity had no choice but to respond or face annihilation. "Do we have any reports from our fleets?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. General Alvarez nodded. "Our forces are scrambling, ma'am. We've mobilized all of Earth's remaining warships, but we're outclassed. The enemy's technology far exceeds anything we've developed. Our current fleet of 50 ships stands no chance against what's coming." The room fell silent. The military had tried to prepare for every contingency, but they were unprepared for this, an enemy with overwhelming firepower and no mercy. Their best hope was to slow the aliens down, buy time until reinforcements could arrive. But that meant sending their most advanced ships into battle, knowing that they would likely never return. "How long until they arrive?" Carter asked, her heart pounding in her chest. "At their current speed, within 2 weeks," Alvarez replied, looking at the map of the solar system on the screen in front of him. "We have a small window to act, but if we're going to stand a chance, we need to build a fleet. Fast." Carter nodded, her mind already racing through the options. The global military-industrial complex would have to work at full capacity, and humanity's best scientists would have to come together to develop the necessary weapons and defenses. But even with all that, they were facing an overwhelming enemy, and no one knew if it would be enough. Across the world, every available shipyard was put to use. The call went out to every country, every organization, to contribute whatever they could. People who had once dreamed of space exploration now worked tirelessly, building warships that could stand a chance against the alien menace. The planet's most advanced technology was repurposed for one goal: survival. But time was not on their side. The alien fleet had grown to monstrous proportions. A report from the outer edge of the solar system showed that the alien armada numbered more than 1,000 ships, most of them enormous war vessels, bristling with weapons humanity could only imagine. And these weren't just ships. They were the tip of the spear. Their scouts and smaller ships had already begun scouting Earth's defenses, looking for weaknesses. The enemy had no intention of simply attacking. They were planning to crush humanity, destroy their resolve, and scatter the remains to the stars. The tension on Earth was palpable. People went about their daily lives, but the atmosphere had changed. Everyone knew that the world was on the brink of war. News broadcasts ran constant updates about the progress of the Earth fleet's preparation, while citizens stood united, waiting for the call to action. Across the globe, military officers briefed their teams, scientists worked in underground bunkers, and engineers toiled day and night to produce ships faster than ever before. As the first wave of warships took shape, a feeling of dread settled over humanity. Would they be ready in time? Could they fight off the alien invaders before their home planet was reduced to a smoking ruin, just like Ilara? The answer was still uncertain, but there was one thing that was becoming crystal clear. Humanity would fight. They would not die without a fight. The camera shifted back to the command center, where President Carter stood before a massive screen showing the construction of Earth's new fleet. A total of 700,000 warships were now in the final stages of assembly. They were massive, powerful, and built for one purpose: to avenge the fallen colony and defend Earth. But the reality was sinking in. Even with such an immense fleet, humanity was outmatched. The aliens had already proven their ability to destroy entire colonies. What chance did Earth stand? "We've got one shot at this," Carter muttered to herself. She turned to General Alvarez. "Prepare the fleet. I want every ship ready for launch in 72 hours. The general nodded, but his expression was uncertain. "The enemy fleet is already closing in, ma'am. We have no idea how many reinforcements they've got. We're out of time." Carter's gaze hardened. "Then we fight, General. We fight until the last ship falls. Earth will not fall without making them pay for every life lost." Outside the command center, the first ships were lifted into the sky, engines roaring as they ascended to join the growing fleet. But even as the ships took flight, a sense of unease gripped the people of Earth. The alien invaders had already shown their power. Now, humanity had to show them that they were not weak, that they would stand together and push back. The countdown to war had begun, and the only question left was, would humanity survive? The war was coming, and every second that ticked by felt like an eternity. The 700,000 warships of humanity, each one a towering testament to human ingenuity and defiance, stood ready in Earth's orbit, primed for battle. But even with this massive fleet, a deep sense of dread hung over the command centers across the globe. The aliens, these invaders from the void, had already proven their dominance. And humanity, despite all their effort, was still vastly outclassed. Admiral Samuel Cross stood on the bridge of the Vanguard, Earth's most advanced warship, a vessel designed for the final defense of the planet. It was a massive, imposing ship, bristling with weapons and shield generators, but even the Vanguard felt small against the backdrop of the vastness of space and the alien forces amassing just beyond their reach. "Admiral, all fleet assets are in position. We await your command," said Commander Hart, standing beside Cross at the command table. Her face was grim, her eyes dark circles from sleepless nights, just like everyone else on the ship. The tension was suffocating. Cross nodded, not taking his eyes off the holographic map of the galaxy. He had been through countless battles, but this was different. This wasn't a skirmish or a tactical strike. This was humanity's survival. Every ship in their fleet, from the smallest fighter to the largest dreadnought, was standing ready to face an enemy that had wiped out an entire colony and was now heading straight for Earth. "We're facing an unknown enemy," Cross said, his voice low, almost to himself. "They'd got the firepower. They'd got the numbers. What we have is unity. And that's all we can count on. This will be our defining moment." The moment he finished speaking, an alert sounded across the ship. The enemy had entered the outer rim of the solar system. "This is it," Cross thought to himself. The alien fleet had arrived. On Earth's surface, governments had called for evacuation, and underground bunkers were being filled with citizens, ensuring the survival of as many people as possible in the event of the worst. Every country had mobilized its military forces, but it was clear. This battle wasn't just for territory. It was for the future of humanity itself. The first clash. "Admiral, the enemy is within weapons range." The sensor officer called out. "They're opening fire." The words hit like a hammer. The very first attack from the alien fleet came without warning. An enormous energy blast shot out from one of the alien warships, and it struck one of humanity's battle cruisers, the Titan. The massive ship shattered into pieces, its hull splitting open like a tin can. Its remains drifted helplessly, a cold, lifeless mass in the vacuum of space. Cross's breath caught in his throat. The destruction of the Titan had been instantaneous. In a matter of seconds, the most powerful ship in humanity's fleet was nothing but space debris. Status. Cross barked, his heart pounding. Shields are holding on the Vanguard, the officer reported. But the blast was unlike anything we've ever seen. We're not equipped for that kind of firepower, sir. A chill ran down Cross's spine. So it begins, he muttered under his breath. All ships return fire. Give them everything we've got. At his command, the Vanguard and the rest of Earth's fleet fired back with everything they had. Massive plasma cannons, railguns, and torpedoes. The space around them lit up with flashes of energy as the human ships launched their counterattacks. But the alien ships, while visibly damaged, showed no signs of slowing down. The enemy shields absorbed the blasts with frightening ease, and their own weapons fired back with deadly precision. Another alien warship fired a volley of projectiles, sending dozens of missiles streaking through the void. A second Earth cruiser was hit, its engines exploding in a blinding flare of light. One by one, humanity's ships were being torn apart, like leaves caught in a storm. "Admiral, the fleet is taking heavy losses," Commander Hart said, her voice tight with fear. "We're outgunned. The aliens have adapted to our tactics. They're outmaneuvering us at every turn." Cross's face hardened. The odds were growing slimmer by the second, but he couldn't afford to back down. Earth's survival depended on this. If they didn't stand firm now, humanity might never get another chance. "All ships form a defensive perimeter around the Vanguard," Cross commanded. "We'll hold the line here, no matter what." The human fleet, battered but determined, formed a defensive ring around the Vanguard, using their remaining strength to protect Earth's most advanced ship. But the enemy was relentless. Another massive explosion rocked the fleet as an alien warship's main cannon fired again, obliterating another human vessel. "Sir, our shields are at 25%, the officer called out, panic creeping into his voice. "We can't take much more of this. The enemy is too strong." Cross's hands clenched into fists, his knuckles white. His mind raced. What were they missing? Was there anything left to do? Just when it seemed like defeat was inevitable, his eyes flickered toward the holographic display. Something strange, a pattern. The aliens had formed a perfect line of attack, all their ships firing in unison, coordinated with deadly precision. It was almost like a strategy, but one they hadn't seen before. "Wait a minute," Cross whispered. "It's not just their weapons. They're pulling us into a trap." He turned to Hart, his mind racing. "We need to break their formation. We can't let them corner us like this. All ships engage evasive maneuvers. We need to scatter them. Do it, now." In the chaos of battle, the fleet suddenly split apart, breaking free from the coordinated alien formation. The human ships scattered, moving in unpredictable paths to confuse the enemy. It worked, at least for a few moments. The aliens were caught off guard, their precision thrown into disarray. But that didn't last long. The enemy quickly adapted to the new tactics, launching more advanced weapons that kept the human ships on the defensive. "Admiral, it's no use," Hart said, her voice strained. "We're losing too many ships. We can't keep up with their firepower. We need reinforcements. We need backup now." Cross took a deep breath, knowing that reinforcements were still light years away. He glanced at the damage reports, seeing the grim truth. They had no choice. "All ships," Cross's voice rang out through the intercom. "This is it. We fight until the last. Humanity is not giving up. Not now. Not ever." As the battle raged on, The sound of metal tearing, the flashes of fire and explosion. The crew of the Vanguard held on with everything they had. They were the last line of defense, standing firm against an unstoppable force. But as the battle unfolded, one thing became clear. Humanity had underestimated the sheer power of the alien invasion. And unless something changed, Earth's very survival was in jeopardy. The battle raged on in the depths of space. Earth's last fleet, the 700,000 warships, were struggling to hold their ground against the alien invaders. The once proud fleet of humanity was now a chaotic mess of fire and destruction, ships scattered across the solar system in a desperate attempt to outmaneuver the alien force. The Vanguard, humanity's greatest hope, had been battered and torn, its shields barely holding, its weapon systems failing one by one. The alien fleet, while suffering some losses, showed no signs of slowing. They were relentless, methodical, and far more advanced than anything Earth had ever encountered. Admiral Samuel Cross stood at the helm of the Vanguard, his hands gripping the command chair as the ship rocked violently from yet another explosion. The sounds of screams and alarms echoed throughout the bridge, but he couldn't afford to show weakness. Not now, not in the face of certain annihilation. His mind raced. Every tactical decision, every maneuver, had been made in a desperate attempt to buy time. But time was running out. "Status report," Cross shouted, his voice cutting through the chaos. "We've lost 3 more ships, sir," the tactical officer replied, her voice strained. "We're down to less than 100 ships still operational, and the aliens, they're not letting up. They're targeting our command ships. They know the Vanguard is the key to our resistance." Cross's eyes narrowed. The enemy was methodical. They had been picking off the human fleet ship by ship, targeting their leaders, their most advanced vessels. It was a strategy meant to break the spirit of humanity. If they could eliminate the command structure, the rest of Earth's forces would crumble. But Earth's remaining fleet wasn't about to go down without a fight. "Prepare for the counterstrike," Cross ordered, his voice steady, but his mind racing for any advantage, any weakness he could exploit. He looked over at Commander Hart. "We need a miracle, Commander." Hart didn't answer immediately. She simply stared at the tactical displays, her face pale, her eyes filled with the kind of exhaustion that only hours of intense battle could bring. But then she looked at Cross, and in that moment, something shifted. There was a fire in her eyes. "Admiral, there is one thing we haven't tried yet," she said. "We've been fighting this enemy head-on, but what if we use their own tactics against them? They're operating as a massive coordinated fleet. What if we break that coordination? We could take down their communications. If we hit them hard enough, fast enough, it might disorient them long enough to give us a chance." Cross's mind began to turn. It was a risk, an enormous one, but it was their only option. The enemy was clearly operating as a hive mind, their ships communicating and coordinating attacks as one unit. If they could sever that connection, even temporarily, it could give the remaining human ships a chance to strike back. "Do it," Cross said, his voice decisive. "Target their communications network. Full firepower. Now." The order was sent, and the Vanguard, alongside the few remaining ships in the fleet, aimed their remaining weapons at the heart of the alien formation. A barrage of plasma and railgun fire shot out, tearing through space toward the alien warships. It was their last-ditch effort to break the enemy's hold over the battlefield. At first, nothing happened. The enemy ships continued their assault, and it seemed like the strike had done nothing to disrupt their flow. But then, a flicker, an explosion deep in the alien formation, and another. A chain reaction rippled through the alien fleet as their communications network began to collapse. Ships that had been perfectly synchronized moments before now moved erratically. The once impenetrable force faltered. The aliens, for the first time, seemed unsure of themselves. "It's working," Commander Hart shouted, her eyes wide with disbelief. For the first time in hours, a glimmer of hope pierced the darkness. The human fleet, fueled by this sudden shift in the tide, surged forward with renewed vigor. Every ship, every crew member, every soldier aboard the remaining warships fought harder than ever before. They were no longer fighting as a fragmented, overwhelmed fleet. They were fighting as one. The last remnants of humanity's forces united, not in desperation, but in defiance. Cross stood tall as he watched the chaos unfold. The alien fleet, once so unstoppable, was now scrambling. Their ships collided, their weapons fired randomly, and in the midst of their confusion, Earth's fleet pressed the attack. The human ships fought with everything they had left, every cannon, every missile, every laser aimed with deadly precision. One by one, alien warships began to fall. The Vanguard fired its remaining payload, launching a devastating shot that struck the heart of the largest alien warship, the flagship that had commanded the invasion. The explosion was cataclysmic, sending shockwaves through space. The alien flagship's massive hull cracked apart, sending debris scattering in all directions. The remaining alien ships hesitated. For the first time, they were on the back foot. "We've got them," Commander Hart yelled, her voice filled with a mixture of relief and disbelief. "We've broken their formation. Keep up the pressure." But even as humanity pressed forward, the alien fleet wasn't done yet. Their leadership had been shaken, but they were far from defeated. Hundreds of warships remained, still able to retaliate. Earth's fleet had broken their coordination, but the alien ships were still formidable, still capable of crushing the remnants of humanity's resistance. Cross knew the battle wasn't over. Not yet. But for the first time in what felt like an eternity, he allowed himself a moment of hope. They had taken the first step in turning the tide. The aliens, those seemingly invincible invaders, were now vulnerable. There was a chance, just a chance, that humanity might survive this war. "All ships," Cross said, his voice ringing through the comms. "We've got one last fight ahead of us. They're not giving up, but neither are we. We finish this, or we die trying." With that, the final battle began.